There was a chair by the stove, low and hard, and 3 days into my marriage I could not rise from it without setting both hands upon the arms and waiting for the room to hold itself still. Women were coming that afternoon to sit with the new bride, as our way is, and there was a kettle wanting filling and bread already gone hard in the box, and I stood gripping that wood like a woman of 80 years, and I told no one. I had no words yet for what was wrong in me. And even had I found them, I already knew, the way you know a thing in your body before your mind will let you say it, what the words would be answered with. That is the part I have carried longest, not the weakness in my own 2 legs, but how certain I already was that to name a sickness would be to be handed back a chore and never any help at all. I want to tell you about the week after my wedding, when I could barely stand, and the one question a stranger asked me a whole month too late, the first person in all my 19 years to look at me and ask who it was that had told me this was ordinary. Before I go on, stay a moment and sit here with me. And down in the comments, if you would, tell me one small thing, for I read everyone. Has anyone ever told you that your suffering was only what everyone bears, and to hush and carry it? I ask that of every woman who finds this window for the first time. There is a little bell here, and if you ring it, I will know to call you back the next evening I have something to tell, for the things I say at this window are the things we are never permitted to say aloud among our own. I was 19, and it was November when I married, a cold, clear day with the fields already turned, and the last of the leaves gone brown in the fence rows. The night before my wedding, my mother came into the room that had been mine since I was a girl, and she sat on the edge of the bed, and she was quiet a long while. I thought she had come to say something tender to me. What she said, in the end, was one sentence. "You endure," she told me. "That is what wives do." Then she smoothed the quilt with her hand, the way she smoothed everything, and she rose and she left me. I lay there and took those words for love, because they were said low and they were all she had to give me, and I did not yet understand that a whole life can be folded up small and put into a girl's hands like that, and called a blessing. So when the tiredness came, and then the fever behind it, I already had my instruction. Endure. That is what wives do. The week after a wedding in our world is not a week of rest. There are visits, family comes, and the neighbors, and the women of the church, and a new wife is meant to be seen keeping her first house, pouring the coffee, setting out the pie, moving light and glad on her feet, the way a bride is supposed to move. And I could not do it. There was a heat under my skin that would not leave, a low burning that sat in me morning and night, and a weakness that came in waves, so that I would be standing at the wash line and have to take hold of the post and put my head down and breathe until the gray went out of my eyes. I hung the wash anyway. I set out the pie anyway. When my hands shook, I kept them busy so no one would see them shake. I smiled at the aunts and I said, "Oh, only a little tired," the way of a new bride, and they laughed and nodded, because that was the answer that let everyone sit comfortable, and I had learned already which answers do that. There were chores I simply could not do, and those frightened me more than the fever, because a woman is known by her work, and I was failing at mine in the first week. I could not carry the full water pails from the pump. I carried them half full and made 2 trips and hoped it looked like carefulness. I could not knead a full batch of bread through without stopping, so I rose before anyone to do it slow, alone, where no one could measure how long it took me. I hid my sickness the way another woman might hide a sin, with early rising and quiet lies, and a great deal of standing very straight, when I wanted only to lie down on the cool floor of the wash house and not get up. And through all of it, a small voice in me kept saying, "Surely this is not right. Surely a body is not meant to burn like this." And I did not know how to trust that voice, because everyone around me was so calm. That is the thing I would tell a young woman now, if she would let me. when you are the only one alarmed, you begin to think the alarm is your own failing. You begin to think the fault is that you feel it at all. I went, at last, to my sister. She had been married 4 years and had 2 little ones, and I trusted her the way you trust the one who went ahead of you down a dark road. I told her, as near as I could, that I was not well, that I was so tired I frightened myself, that there was a heat in me that would not go. And she was kind. I want that understood. She was not cruel to me. She took my hand and she smiled a tired smile of her own, and she said, "Oh, sister, that is only how it is at first. Every wife goes through it. It settles. You will get your strength back." And then she said the thing that closed the door, the thing that was meant as comfort and landed on me like a latch dropping. She said, "We do not make a fuss over it. It has always been so. It has always been so." I have heard that sentence more times in my life than I could count, and I have watched it do more quiet harm than any hard word ever did, because there is no arguing with it. It is not a reason, it is a wall. When a woman tells you a thing has always been so, she is not unkind. Most often, she is only handing you the same folded-up blessing that was handed to her, worn soft from all the hands it has passed through. But a fever does not know that it has always been so. A fever goes on burning just the same. There was one more person I tried, though I have never told anyone this part. My husband's mother came on the Thursday with a basket of mending, and we sat with our needles by the window, and I gathered my courage the way you gather kindling, one small stick at a time. I said only that I was very tired. She did not look up from her stitch. She said that her first year she had fallen asleep standing at the stove and burned the supper and been ashamed of it for 40 years. And I understood that she was not dismissing me. She was showing me her own scar and calling it a keepsake. That frightened me more than the silence had. I stopped asking after that. I decided the fault must be in me, that I was weaker than the women before me, and that the endurance my mother had named was a thing I simply lacked and must learn. So I bent lower. I said less. And the illness, left alone in the dark with no one to call it by its name, did what illnesses do when no one tends them. It grew. It ended in the wash-house, on a gray morning near a month gone by. I had risen early again to do the wash where no one would see how slow I was, and I bent over the tub, and the heat came up in me all at once, worse than it had ever been, and the gray came into my eyes, and this time it did not stop at gray. I woke on the stone floor with the cold soaking through my dress, and did not know how long I had lain there. My mother-in-law found me. She was not a warm woman, but she was not a fool either, and when she saw my face, she went quite still. And what she said, when she said it, told me the whole of the world I had married into. She did not say, "We must get this child to a doctor." She said, "We will take her to the English clinic in town," and then, lower, half to herself, so the neighbors will not talk. That was the reason that finally moved us. Not that I might be dying, that someone might notice and speak of it and shame the family with the noticing. I did not care by then what the reason was. I only wanted the burning to stop. The clinic was a bright, cold place that smelled of soap, and the doctor was an Englishwoman, not young, with reading glasses down her nose and a manner that was brisk and not unkind. She asked me questions, and I gave her the small, careful answers I had been giving everyone for a month. Oh, only a little tired, the way of a new bride, and she did not nod and let me be the way the ants had. She stopped. She looked at me over the top of those glasses, and she looked a long moment, and then she asked me how long I had been like this. And when I told her, when the true number of days came out of my mouth, said plain for the first time, she set down her pen. She told me what was wrong. I will not lay it all out here, for it is not a thing to make a spectacle of. It is enough to say it was an infection that had been let go far, far too long, and a body worn down to nothing on top of it, and that another few days of enduring might have taken more from me than my strength. She said it should have been seen to within days. Within days. And then she asked me the question. She took her glasses off, and she folded them in her hand, and she looked at me. A girl of 19 who had walked in still apologizing for the trouble of it, and she said quietly, "Who told you this was normal? Who told you this was normal?" No one had ever asked me that. In all the month, and in all the 19 years before the month, not one soul had turned the question that way around. Every question I had ever been handed was aimed at me. What had I done? Why was I not managing? Why could I not carry the water and knead the bread and be glad on my feet like a bride is meant to be? This was the first question in my life that was not aimed at me at all. It was aimed at all of them. At my sister's tired smile. At my mother on the edge of my bed. At the whole soft wall of "has always been so." And I sat in that cold, bright room, and I could not answer her, because the answer was everyone. Everyone had told me. And no one had ever meant me harm by it, and that was the worst of it, that so gentle a thing, passed hand to hand with love, had very nearly cost me my life. I did not weep in front of her. I had a great deal of practice by then in not weeping in front of people. But something came loose in me in that room that has never gone back to how it was, and I am glad of it, though it cost me some peace to carry it home. I went home with medicine, and with instruction to rest, real rest, the doctor said, and she said it firm, as though she knew it would be argued with, and it was. And I went home with that one sentence, "Who told you this was normal?" And I have never once in all the years since been able to set it down. I did not make a scene with it. That is not our way, and it is not mine. I did not stand up in the yard and accuse the women who had loved me poorly by teaching me to bear too much. Most of them had been taught the very same, and were bearing the very same, and did not know another way to hand a girl into her life. I will tell you what real rest looked like, because I had never once seen it. For 9 days my husband carried the wash water and did not speak of it, and the neighbors were told I had a fever, which was true enough. I lay in the afternoon light and listened to the house go on without me, the door, the kettle, the cattle at 4 o'clock, and I learned the strangest lesson of that whole strange month. The world does not fall down when a woman lies down. Everything I had dragged myself off the chair to do in that first terrible week could have waited. All of it. No one had ever told me that either. But something changed in me, quietly, and it stayed changed. I stopped taking, "Oh, it has always been so," for an answer, first from others and then, harder, from my own self. When my body told me a thing was wrong, I learned to believe it before I learned to be ashamed of it. It took me years. Shame comes back like a fever too, and has to be tended each time. And when my own daughters came and grew and stood at the edge of their own womanhood, I did a thing my mother had not done for me. I did not sit on the edge of a bed and hand them a folded-up sentence about enduring. I told them plainly that pain is not always a duty, that a body that burns is asking for help and not for hiding, and that there is no shame, none at all, in saying out loud, "I am not well," and being believed. I told them there would be people who would call their suffering only what everyone bears, and I told them those people might love them and be wrong all the same. That is the whole of it, or as much as one evening can hold. A girl of 19, hanging wash she could not carry, hiding a fever like a sin, because everyone she trusted had taught her that the trouble was hers to swallow. And one stranger, an English doctor with her glasses down her nose, who asked the one question none of my own had ever thought to ask, and by the asking of it, gave me back the right to believe my own body. Tell me in the comments, so the other women will know they are not the only one. Has anyone ever told you that your suffering was only what everyone bears, and to hush and carry it, when what you needed was for someone to stop and ask who taught you that. I read everyone, and I answer where I can. And the little book, A Quiet and Faithful Home, is waiting for you still, in the pinned comment and in the code there on your screen, my gift, whenever you would like it. Ring the little bell before you go, so I will know to call you back, and stay a while near this window with me. Sit at this window with me again. There is always more of the story than one evening can hold.